Welcome to Great Cliff Exotic Gardens. We're really excited because yesterday we found some frog spawn in our pond. We've also put some canes next to our sweet peas so they can climb up. And here as well.
Welcome to another edition of Exotic Gardening UK, Yorkshire Kris Weekly. It's been a fantastic week, so still and sunny every day. It's meant that all the plants have had a good dose of sunshine and carried on growing. But the nights have been pretty cold with morning frosts on several occasions, and that will carry on for the week ahead and probably beyond that into early May as usual in the north of England. And tonight, especially Sunday night, we might see a proper frost. We might get down to actually zero. It's not been down to zero all week. It's been down to 1 or 2 degrees on the coldest mornings for about an hour or so, which has meant a frost on the roofs and cars and things like that. But the plants in the garden have not been affected. Growth has not been checked in any way because only really the hardy plants are outdoors. Just want to talk a bit about hardiness and the order that we get plants out. And obviously the things that are in the ground growing all year round, they don't mind a bit of frost. Even all the plants that have been uncovered, so the palms that were covered in the coldest parts of the year, and some of the arid plants, they don't mind a little bit of frost at this time of year if it's just a few hours early in the morning, because the days are warm enough to compensate for any cold nights. So those sort of plants are fine uncovered at this time of year. Things a bit more leafy, things like bananas that have been inside all winter don't really want to be just stuck outside and left to it at this time of year because it's still cold at night. So things like even Musa Baju, if you've had them indoors, warm, growing strongly, and then bring them out, they are going to get the leaves scorched, whereas Musa Baju that have been outside all winter, uncovered for a little while now, and their leaves are unfurling, are just a bit more adaptable and a bit hardier, and they won't get affected by frost as much. They still might get their edges browned, but they won't get the leaves going completely floppy like they would if you're not hardened off plants that have been inside. Onset bananas, again, they can be brought out now in the daytime, brought back in if it's cold at night. They're a little bit more robust, but you don't want to leave them out 24 hours really if you know you're going to get frost. I mean, the weather forecast might change. We might get an amazing mild end of spring, but the chances are we're still going to get frosty mornings. And if you compare the plants that we're bringing out to the native trees that we have growing around us, things like the ash and the oak, they've not unfurled their leaves yet. They know it might still get cold and they don't want their leaves blackened by late frosts. Either they're proper hardy plants, they still don't have leaves at this time of year. Things like ash, for instance, don't get all their leaves till late May, early June in some locations. Hawthorn, their leaves are out now. They start early, but a lot of the native trees are just not quite ready to get into full growth yet, and that is the same for any sort of exotic looking and tropical plants that we're trying to grow in the UK. They need a little bit more time so the nights are warmer before they can really start growing. And obviously if you're used to growing veg and things like that, things like tomatoes and marrows, you wouldn't bring them out now in early April. So it's the same for all the sort of tender plants, the exotic garden, that you wouldn't bring them and leave them outdoors at this time of year coming into early April. So coming up on today's programme, now, early in the week, I've posted on Facebook that I'll be planting out or bringing out my Aeoniums from the greenhouse. And as you can see, they are really wanting to be outside now. They've gone very blush red, smaller rosettes at the top, and that is because they're just sitting here in trays with no real water, definitely no soil on them. So they're really wanting to get outside and start growing now. It's warmer temperatures. But I know we're going to have a potentially cold night tonight, Sunday night, so I'm just going to leave that until the middle of the week before I bring these outside, and then I'll plant these out probably the week after the weekend, and this will allow me to have lots more space in the greenhouse for all my seedlings. Now with Aeoniums and other succulents, they do need hardening enough to some extent, but because the leaves are used to keeping moisture in, then they don't need hardening enough in the same way as, say, the bananas and other very foliage, thin leaves plants would need. If I put these straight into full sun, they could still burn, even though they want full sun when they're growing. So when I bring them out this week, I will bring them into shady conditions and then plant them out to full sun after a few days or a week's time, just to give them a bit of a chance just to adapt to the lighter conditions outside. And this will give me lots more space, like I said, for my seedlings. And if we look down, we can see that they're growing well. So loads of seedlings have come up already. We've got the Cleomis seedlings down here that have come up. We've got the Ipomea lobata seedlings that have started to come up. We've got the Prince of Wales feathers that have all germinated like a rash over there. And we've got the zinnias that have all germinated in that corner. So they'll be ready soon to prick out into their own pots, and that's when I'll need more space on the benches for those, and then we can start more seedlings in a week or so's time, such as the ricinus, and they'll be going in the propagator in middle of April. Now one thing I've done this week is pot up quite a few of the tetrapanax runners that were mainly in the front garden, and when you dig these up, they don't really have their own roots really. They might have one or two, mainly the long runners from the mother plant. So when you untach them from the main plant, then they don't have that supply line of nutrients and fluids as well. So I've cut off all but the smallest, newest leaves of these, effectively cuttings really, rather than new plants. But hopefully I'm keeping them in the shade mainly, keeping them well watered. Hopefully they'll establish and will root over the next few weeks and form new plants. Not all of these will make it, but most of them hopefully should, and I'll have plenty of plants to pass on to people later in the year. Now this is a Cordyline australis Torbay Dazzler. It's definitely not a fully reliably hardy plant, but will get through in mild areas and in mild winters. And I've planted it out just for a bit of interest, as it is summer bedding, and if it survives winters great, if it doesn't it'll be replaced. And it just gives a nice bit of interest on this corner before you get to the bridge here, and then just behind it you'll get the huge Miscanthus giganteus grasses growing that'll be well over 2 meters tall by July. And in the area here we've got the real Gunnera manicata that will easily cover all this area very easily in a year or two, and hopefully this summer with plenty of water it'll make a substantial plant after planting out just last summer. And behind that we have the Scheffler taiwaniana, and that is the hardy umbrella plant, and if you have a closer look you can see that it's stirring into growth. Now this week I received a new palm, Trachycarpus, because apparently it was grown from seed that was labelled as nanus seeds, but this is obviously not a nanus because of its size basically, and compared to my other nanus it looks nothing like it, but it could be a nanus hybrid, or it could be a nova, which it looks pretty similar to. So what I'm going to do is just compare this to my nanus and my nova and a fortunei, just so we can look at the differences between those. So this is the palm in question. If we look at the trunk itself, we can see the shape of it, narrowing at the top a bit. And these close knit fibres on the trunk, a little bit of tomentum, not much fluff on here, and on the petioles, the leaf stalks here. Really, really long petioles, all these stalks, and this is apparently 15 years old from seed. The leaves themselves, they're pretty green underneath. There's a little bit of glaucousness, but not much really. Quite strong leaves here as well, sort of good green colour. And they're about 270 degrees leaves, maybe a little bit more. And so that is this palm that I received. Now let's compare that to a Nova. Now this is a Nova, albeit a much bigger plant than the one I've just received. And you can see again it's got the really long petioles. It's got the narrowing stem. And then if we look at the leaves, again they're about 270 degrees. Yeah, pretty much all like that. Again, sort of a mid-green colour. It's pretty similar. But the actual trunk itself, zoom in, it's got lots of the tomentonum, the fluffy stuff on the base of the leaves. And the fibres on the trunk are not quite as tight, but obviously it's more mature, this one, so it's hard to exactly say. Now let's have a look at Aeoniums. So Aeoniums is a very strange little creature. It's a tiny little thing, really tiny. It's no bigger than my hand, even though it's several years old. Anyway, the leaves on this are quite a dark green, and they're nowhere, they're not even 180 degrees going around here. It's not got a trunk, really, it's underground trunk, just a little bit above ground, so there's nothing really to show you. That's a true Aeoniums. That's very different from the palm I received. And this is a regular Fortunii, which is again, it's got leaves from nearly 280 to 90 degrees here. Sort of a green colour leaves, obviously mid-green. And the trunk itself, you can see down there, a bit more stout, a bit more squat actually. And not too much tomentum on there. There is a little bit, but not that much. So let's look at all 4 leaves together on the screen so we can compare them. And here's a Trachycarpus princeps hybrid. As you can see, look at all the different Trachycarpus palms. They are quite difficult to tell what they are, especially when they're small. But once they're mature into much bigger palms, it's a lot easier to see the differences and tell them apart. So whatever my new Trachycarpus palm is, I'll plant it out and watch it develop over the next couple of years and see which palm it resembles most in the garden. Thank you for watching this edition of Exotic Gardening UK, Yorkshire Kris Weekly. Join me next time, I'll be doing more jobs in the garden.